And we should be back. I apologize for the hiccup there. Of course, technical difficulties is a staple of the war report. Of course, it's all a very fun time. But yeah, go on and explain your little diatribe to the audience again about Qatar and the natural gas.
Yeah, so sorry guys that happened. Yeah, so what I was saying was that this movement by Qatar to leave OPEC, I think, is actually really significant because remember, even before Russia joined in assisting Assad militarily, in the run-up to the election, WikiLeaks leaked that Hillary was well aware that Qatar was funding Al-Qaeda both in Syria and Iraq. So you might wonder, why leave OPEC when it seemed like this is a founding member, almost always compliant, helped bring unity to OPEC for so many decades? And I think it's because the amount of gas that they have, and that is how and why that Qatar is so wealthy. A country of just 2.7 million people. Its oil production is less than 2% of the entire oil production of the world, so it's quite small. But its liquid gas production is the highest in the world. And I think basically what's going on is that they have made some kind of concession with Iran. I think they've made some kind of an agreement, and that the possibility of a pipeline, being built across Iraq into Syria into the Mediterranean is probably going to be back on the shelf. Off the shelf. And this, I think, also with Turkish Stream being built, is probably the solution to the problem that existed about 3-4 years ago. So this is going to be a major move. I think Qatar now will probably feel less pressure to side with Saudi Arabia. This will leave Saudi Arabia in a more weakened position, I think. This does seem the way things are going. There's all these institutions that we've had for so many decades, whether it's the EU, whether it's OPEC, and they're fracturing. And individual nations are making decisions that suit them at the moment better than if they stay within these groups.
Oh, absolutely, I agree. And staying in the theme of comedy within this, I think it's also hilarious how this anti-Iran coalition that Trump first proposed when he was first in office has just completely fallen apart. The Arab NATO, it's not going to happen. Qatar has pulled out. Saudi Arabia is in a weaker position than ever. On top of this, their years-long budget crisis in 2014. And yeah, everything, it's funny because you look at the grand chessboard, if you will, to borrow a phrase from our good friend Brzezinski. Russia and China have pretty much won by putting in minimal effort. Yeah. It's been insane. All it took was just, we're going to put some military assets in Syria, and all of a sudden they just win. The U.S. spends trillions upon trillions of dollars in this region that has been in perpetual war since the beginning of human civilization, and all it takes is some Russians and some Iranians to say, oh yeah, we're gonna, dedicate some air power, maybe, fund some militias to fight ISIS, and all of a sudden it's like, they won.
Right, and can you imagine if America, France, and Britain and Israel stopped meddling? Can you imagine how much more quickly this war would have been over by now?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I think the writing is on the wall that there is a solution. These are the parties that are going to benefit. I think what we were looking at in 2014 and 15 was that Syria was going to be destroyed according to Saudi Arabia and Israel's wishes, and Qatar was going to be rich if it just played the game and went along with it. And Qatar has bailed out of that, I think. they're going to continue to form good relations with Iran. Those gas fields, by the way, a huge majority of them are all submerged, and they're in the Persian Gulf. So Iran is next door. So essentially, they're going
Okay.
to have to cooperate along many lines, and they've decided to make hay.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing we also have to look at is
Hello?
OPEC will still be convening for their annual meeting in Vienna tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So that's something to look forward to. I'm curious how things will be there in terms of the tensions. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, it should be interesting.
but I just do want to finish off the show with some European talk about Brexit and the elections in Spain. So we'll just breeze right through this. So in my absence, Theresa May decided to destroy the United Kingdom. Um, and everyone across the political spectrum was outraged with May for various reasons. Uh, Now, this deal, from my assessment, is basically the UK is going to be trapped in perpetual negotiations while sacrificing their seat in the EU Parliament. Now, there's rumors that this will force an election in the coming months. Now, UKIP is MIA, especially with Farage resigning over internal party disputes, which that's an entire story in and of itself. And if an election were to be held within the recent upcoming months, I would expect a Labour victory.
Yeah, absolutely, it will. They'll take it easily. The Tories are, I think, for the foreseeable future, finished.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty much the bellwether of Western conservatism. I bash on the Republicans here a lot, but compared to what some of these other countries have, I look at like some of these weak-wristed neocons and like you're far right compared to them. I gotta admit that, but yeah, it's just hilarious because the Tories, they had everything going for them, but they squandered it. It's pretty much what's been happening all over the world, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, time and time and time again. Now, to top all of this off, this is probably the funniest part of all this. Spain sailed some ships to the there's the Straits of Gibraltar while blasting the Spanish national anthem on loop. That was probably the best part of all this, just showing the once great United Kingdom that once ruled a third of the world is being passed up by a crumbling Southern European country.
Yeah, owned,
Yeah.
literally owned. Um, it's quite a sight. I don't know what's going to happen with Brexit. I mean, I had my doubts. I honestly I thought that all along that the Tories, the Conservatives, were going to botch this. I think intentionally.
You think it was sabotage?
Uh,
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean,
there's also
Theresa May actually campaigned to stay in the Union.
right, and then there's the whole issue with Northern Ireland, the border. Nobody wanted a hard border, but apparently, according to Jeffrey Cox, who is uh, their chief justice, I suppose. I forget what would be the correct term. Uh, he has released several pages about, just as you said, that there would be almost perpetual negotiations in order to avoid a part of Britain that would still be in the EU and a part of it that wouldn't. And how to navigate that without creating a hard border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, which is a part of the UK. So, I mean, I'm very sure that there's very strong legal challenges to all of this. But if there was a will, there probably would be a way.
Yeah. Well, the way I'm looking at it is the European Union is
May's
going to be
government
destroyed by the
and
time
May
they get
herself
out.
are so tepid.
Yeah. But
But
there's not going to be European Union by the time they reach a final deal.
Yeah, I don't. We're what 113 days now, 114 till it has to be signed.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very interesting third of a year left.
Now, for a European country that's doing much better than the UK, Spain. I never thought I'd say that sentence. Spain's doing better than another country, but the Spanish region of Andalusia, as well as other regions, but Andalusia in particular, the only region not to fall to Muslim conquest, held local elections on Sunday. Now, the so-called far-right party Vox, not to be confused with the left-wing website, was the winner of the day. This is the first time a right-wing party has won in Andalusia since 1982. Now, Vox also managed to gain seats in Cadiz, Malaga, Seville, Cordoba, Granada, Huelva, and Jaén. For my Spanish speakers out there, hopefully you know what those mean, because I don't, whether I pronounce that right or not, but that's aside the point. Spain's populist right has resurged, mainly as a result of calls for Catalonian secession. Now, Spain has also been at the forefront of the migrant crisis, with an ineffective conservative party that Vox has criticized, and now they have a left-wing party in power as of June. So, yeah, Spain's pretty much at the forefront of all this, and I'm not surprised that they were the next country to fall to populism.
Right, and I was listening to several Spanish analysts talk about this, and how and what was happening in Catalonia basically spurred the same thing to happen in Andalusia and other parts of Spain. And of course, they have touched upon that immigration was a part of the reason for the rise of the populist right. Myself, I also think you can. I think the feeling is throughout Europe that the EU is sputtering, it's failing, and Euroscepticism is not really that new. It's been around for a good solid 10 years, and I would say the last 5, it's become, a very influential way of thinking about Europe, even if it's critical and doesn't always have perhaps an idea, a vision for the future. However, you can see that there's lots of countries right now that are falling back on a kind of identity that they had prior to the EU. And it's happening in Spain, and it's probably already happening and percolating in France as well. And this comes when I think, for the West, especially for Western Europe, when it seems very uncertain where the course of the civilization is going, that there is a necessary sort of grounding that has to take place. And this is the way Spain and Italy, Hungary are finding their way in order to weather something that they can sense down the road is going to be a very difficult challenge.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely.
Of course, the progs are just going to, say that they're becoming fascist. It's more complicated than that. They're not. And in many ways, fascism was really a way to cope with a society that was enormously changed almost overnight by the Industrial Revolution and democracy. It itself arises out of this conflict. It is still not, what we would call traditionalism.
Yeah, I heard somebody say once, I can't remember who exactly, that fascism was basically the dollar store brand of monarchism and traditionalism, which I would say that's probably what it is, that they were trying to grasp what they had lost. I mean, Franco, speaking of Spain, fascism, Franco, it's funny because he wasn't really a fascist. He was basically a monarchist. He declared himself a regent and invited the Spanish royal family back to rule the country. And they did rule the country for a while before organizing elections. So, yeah, that's actually been interesting. And, in terms of the life cycle of nations, you're seeing it. Like, the fire rising in these Eastern European countries, Italy, Spain, but you're seeing the UK just kind of rolling over and dying, even though they voted to get out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I saw an interesting pictograph of which countries think that their country, their civilization, isn't perfect, but it's superior to others. And
Yeah.
it was unquestionable that Eastern European countries, almost unanimously, all of them had higher opinions about their countries than Western countries. Um, you know, France, Spain, and well, Britain actually did better than most, but France and Spain had fairly low opinions of their own countries.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not surprised.
Hello?
You know, half a century of indoctrination within your own education system, making you hate yourself. That has its tolls. But with that, we've covered all the topics for today, and with the inconsistency of the internet. Granted, this is the best stream we've had since the beginning of the show back in March, and it took a new program, but this is probably the best we've ever done. Thank you all for tuning in to the return of the War Report. This has been very fun. It's good to be back, and I'm glad the world didn't burn down too much in our absence. So
Thanks.
I will see you guys next time.